They're not anonymous questions, by the way, not from me.
All right, fine. Yeah.
Don't blame me.
Yeah.
First question is performance comparison between logic apps and BizTalks in terms of throughput and low latency. Okay.
Okay. How fast is logic?
Do you want to read it all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So second question is connector for blockchain?
For
logic
BizTalk
apps?
or logic apps?
Both, I think.
Why not? Yeah.
If it's on logic app, we can use logic app adapter to connect that. So
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Blockchain is a service, right?
a connector.
Yes.
Let's say that. Will Feature Pack will support Visual Studio 2017, 18, and or SQL Server 17, 18? So that's for BizTalk related feature
question, yeah. It looks like you're a bit lost, John, when it's a Feature Pack.
If Feature Pack will support
No, I'm just reading.
at some point
This looks support for VS.
new versions of Visual Studio or new versions of SQL Server.
And SQL 2017, 18.
Okay.
Okay, yep.
XSLT 3.0 in BizTalk Server. When?
Yeah.
Again, these are anonymous questions. They're not mine.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you, buddy.
No, that was mine. To be honest, that was mine.
Yeah.
So, TLS 1.3 in Logic Apps and BizTalk Server.
Okay.
API management on premise. When?
Yes, all right. Where's Vlad? Vlad's not arrived yet, right? He was just in the room next door.
Oh, is there? You need to come here. You can't hide in the audience.
Right here for you, man.
So,
Management on-prem. I think that's... Yeah.
how you want or plan to deliver Logic App on premise? Do we actually need the all Azure stack, or it'll be delivered like in a container or something like that?
Okay. Just stack. All right.
Yeah, I think the next is the same. It will have a more light way to acquire Azure stack.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. Similar question.
Okay,
All right.
anybody else want to add
Yes.
something? Or two more?
You got another page?
Yeah.
All right.
I was collecting.
Has he asked any of you guys these questions already?
Yeah.
He said a tweet just to make it like official, but I think it's all his.
Yeah. Alrighty.
I got it, a lot of answers. So I think this is for BizTalk. Why Microsoft is still using SQL Adapter? It's obsolete.
Okay.
We will have a new version of BizTalk, or we are expecting a new version in sometime soon of BizTalk?
Next version of BizTalk. Yeah.
It is possible to resume a Logic app, not from the beginning, but from a point of failure, or when it will be supported.
Rewind and replay.
So instead of, I know that today if you retry, it starts from the beginning.
Okay.
They want to start resume from the point of failure.
All right. Good. Yes.
And that's it.
John, another one.
Who's speaking? Yes. Sorry.
So do ex-MVPs make better product team members?
I can answer that one right now. Fine. Obviously. In fact, Kent could answer that question as well. What do you think? Of course.
Are you done, Sandro?
I think I have a couple of questions from Eldert. What will Microsoft do to position the Azure integration services better as a complete suite? And looking at products as Dell Boomi, they present a complete offering of iPaaS components. Azure has all the components to bring a full offering, but it's hard to make customers understand. They form a complete suite. What will you do in regards of making this better? And there's another question. At Build, we heard all about the intelligent cloud and intelligent edge. How can we expect this to change our view on the integration world? In which way will artificial intelligence and machine learning be incorporated into this?
Yep.
Any more questions? Oh, no more.
Do some sorting.
John, so another one's, do you guys feel that Gartner understand the Microsoft platform very well?
All right. Yeah. Do Gartner know what we're doing? What's that?
I was kind of thinking more understand.
Oh, well. Yes. Do you think they don't? Do you think we should be in the top right already and they just don't understand?
One other question. Will you think about open sourcing BizTalk source code? I know just for all the other BizTalk guys here working with BizTalk for a long time, I think it makes sense that they may have fixes for you. If you're working on the cloud side, then maybe we as a community can support you by submitting patches for BizTalk in the meantime.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have a firm date or firm plans to actually fix the breakage between the Visual Studio tools for Logic Apps and BizTalk development? Because they collide at the moment, don't they? If you've got the Logic Apps tool set installed, it doesn't work.
Is the short answer. I'll write it down. Sorry about breaking the tools. Yes.
Hi. I do not know if we have the proper setup for this, but I would like to know what is the position of Dynamics 365 Common Data Services in the Microsoft integration vision regarding roles and responsibilities?
Okay. The position of Dynamics Common Data Service with respect to Azure integration. Dynamics, Azure, CDS, WTF. Okay.
One last question. We've seen in the morning, and we've experienced this in projects as well, that high availability and geo-redundancy is more complex than you would think in the beginning. And competing with Amazon, I would like to ask if there's any idea at Microsoft to make it easier, like more redundancy out of the box.
Okay. Is that a Logic App specific or an Azure sort of general question? General. Okay. 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 That's a bunch of questions.
This is one more, I guess.
Okay, this is for Kent. He mentioned CDs for apps yesterday. From what I can tell, there isn't a mechanism for monitoring the data flows that are going through the data integrator. Will the admin analytics capabilities he mentioned in relation to Microsoft Flow in his presentations yesterday going to extend to CDS integrations too? That's your first question. There's one more.
Do you understand that question?
The second one is more of a Logic App durable functions API management question, opinion request. There are a number of integration patterns, routing slip, canonical messaging that I've used in my BizTalk days. I'm moving on to doing more Azure-based solutions where I'm wondering whether these patterns are needed to be applied due to the level of abstraction. You can get with the likes of what you can do in API management and integration accounts for canonical messaging and routing slip. Example, using the orchestration function as the processor. This is from Jazz.
Okay. Great. Is that it?
That's it, yeah.
All right. Hang on. Let me just take another one. Not from you. Yeah.
Liquid template, visual designer.
Yeah.
It's on the roadmap.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah, let me try and group some of these questions together if I can. There's a Visual Studio one. Yeah, where is it? Sorry, I'm looking straight past it. Yes, it's up here, right. Kind of tooling. features, TLS. All right, let me try to start going through some of these. Yeah, Paul, why don't we just let me just start. Well, let's start with this one, because I'm sure this is one that people are all wondering about the next version of BizTalk. What are our plans in terms of BizTalk going forward? Yeah, you're nearest, sorry.
All right, so is this mic on? Great, that's too bad. Right. Well, right now the focus is on helping our customers and our partners migrate existing workloads running on BizTalk Server 2013 R2, which is end of life here in a few weeks, to BizTalk Server 2016. We're also very well focused on completing the delivery of our Feature Pack 3. Woohoo! It's all about Office 365. And then the cumulative update 5 that follows that. And after that, we hope to put some emphasis on helping the evolution and acceptance of logic apps in the market by allocating some of our resources to helping move accelerators to the cloud and build out the enterprise connectors. And then after that, we'll see where we are and think about the next release. Okay. Do I ever provide a simple yes/no answer? No. If you ask me direct questions and I'm under cross-examination, I'll do that. But otherwise, no.
What strategic advice would you give to our customers waiting for our next version of BizTalk Server? Nothing standard.
We take follow-on questions?
No, we can add it to the bottom of the list, though. I'll answer this one and try to be really succinct. You want to answer it? Okay.
Well, you can do it if you want to be more succinct.
Well, you can do it.
Right. So the follow-on question is, what strategic advice do we give to our customers that are looking to deploy new workloads in the future? Is it continue deploying on BizTalk, move to logic apps? I believe the message we're trying to get across, and we're using all of our skills of persuasion, perhaps, in doing so, change, is that we really need our customers, you, our customers, and our partners to start to evaluate logic apps. And if we can reasonably deliver in a reasonable time period logic apps on-prem, and we can evolve logic apps in the cloud, we need you to look at it sooner rather than later. And that's the bit of coercion here, okay? So that we get enough volume feedback that we can well prioritize the input and target our investments for logic apps so that they'll meet your needs as enterprise customers and our partners' needs in the foreseeable future. So please start getting on the road to looking at logic apps, okay? It's the cloud replacement for BizTalk Server. And we really need you to get on the road to checking it out, giving us the feedback. If you're late to the game, that may be something we can't fix later on, okay? So strategically, continue to deploy on BizTalk Server, but consider moving workloads to the cloud. That's where we get our return on our investments.
All right. I'll just add to that a little bit, because the second question is around all the feature pack stuff. I think, just so everybody knows, we know that we can't expect customers to even consider moving from BizTalk until they have a viable alternative, right? So one of the things you've heard us talking about is bringing things to on-premises. Even if we brought logic apps to on-prem, your next question will be, well, what about Service Bus on-prem? What about API management on-prem? So we know that we have a bunch of work to do, so that we know that we have to continue to support you, and you have to continue to support your customers strategically in terms of the lifetime and expectations of BizTalk Server. This is exactly why we are going to continue shipping feature packs. Feature Pack 3 is the next one. All of these, requests for features. I don't know whether you disagree, but I don't really see why any of these couldn't potentially be feature packs. But it's really driven by you guys. It's driven by our customers in terms of what makes sense. Because I think, the whole idea behind the feature packs originally was that we deliver value more frequently than we've been able to in the past. The whole company is shifting to this model with Windows 10 and other products where we just, stop making customers upgrade to major releases, because it's an extremely painful and extremely time-consuming and costly exercise. So if we can do things in feature packs, I think, it's everybody's preference to do that. So I'll just got to cover off the second question, unless Paul, kicks me off stage. I think, we want to continue this model, but we really want to understand whether it's working for you guys, understand the pain points of continuing this by delivering features like new adapters as we go. And if it doesn't, let us know and we'll figure it out.
I think the bit with that, so I agree with you. I think the feature pack thing works for me. I think the bit where it's missing is people aren't clear how the feature pack is affects like the support cycle.
And that's a reasonable question, and I guess what I think we'd say to that is, was that? Yeah, sorry. The question was, that's great having feature packs, but it doesn't extend the lifetime or life cycle of the product. So what happens down the road when we start bumping up against what if there isn't a new release announced at whatever that point in time, whether it's next week or in a year's time? I think it comes back to what I just said, that we don't expect customers to not have a reasonable time frame to move to something else if they want to move to something else. So it's like we're not going to present you with a cliff edge at some point in the near future where you are forced to make a change. We're not going to do that. So if we have to figure out, and this will be interesting for us, figure out how we can extend the life cycle of the existing product, we'll have to figure that out. And if it means that we roll up all the feature packs to another release and add new capabilities, we'll do that. That's our current thinking.
Is it worth just, because service packs increase the lifespan, so is it worth just changing features?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of mechanisms we can use. But again, this is why we love coming to these events and answering these awkward questions, is to understand, what works best for you and how can we make that work into, the way the whole industry is going so that we all have, an optimal experience of getting new features more quickly and having predictability for customers to understand the roadmap of our products, right? I don't know whether you disagree.
How can I disagree?
Good. All right.
Can I have one additional question to that? I'm over here on the left side.
Sorry, yeah.
Hello. Yes. Do you have a timeline for getting all the BizTalk features in Logic Apps then? Because I think customers could be waiting for some functionality like BRE.
Yes, that's a really good question. I think the short answer is no, because I think we would have said we wish we were already there, right? So things take time. We're trying to deliver on new capabilities as well as bring in existing ones. We want to, as I said yesterday, we want to get everything in there that BizTalk has, and honestly, we want to kind of improve and modernize a lot of these things as well, whether it's industry standards and providing more of those. So we don't have a definitive timeline for this, which is why we do not have a definitive timeline for anything else, right? Because it's driven by you guys, it's driven by all of our customer base, what makes sense in the order in which we do things and the prioritization of all of that we deliver what you need as soon as possible. And some of these things we hear a lot more noise about than others, the kind of business rules engine in the cloud. People expect something different to just kind of lifting and shifting these things, and we're kind of working through this. So we do our kind of planning for all of Azure in kind of semesters, so sort of 6 monthly cycles, sort of January to June and July to the end of the year. And we're just going through this process right now because we're heading towards July 1. So you'll see more of these gaps being closed over the next 6 months, and you'll see more in the 6 months after that and more in the 6 months after that. So we're going to keep making incremental progress, addressing things like the integration patterns and some of the other things, like the ESP toolkit type stuff that you see into the routing slips and other things. We're just going to keep chipping away at that. There's no grand plan that we're going to say in 2 years' time it's all done. I think, our hope is that we would be, but we can't guarantee these things, right?
John, can I just say that it's driven by the customers. It's a fine answer. Thanks. It's driven by the customers is a fine answer, but people know, or people have been speculating about the death knell, for want of a better word, of BizTalk for many years. So not having a story.
But how many versions of BizTalk have you shipped?
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. But not having a story. I mean, we all know the BRE isn't there. We all know various other things aren't there. These are things that we know.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying, Paul's saying about moving people to Logic Apps and getting people to start taking on those workloads on Logic Apps. If they're using these services that aren't available, then those gaps are evident to everybody, right? So,
okay, well, let me kind of ask a question back, and I know I'm just wandering off script here. So, we're not actually certain of how important this is. In all honesty, the business rules engine does come up, but not as often as you would think. And we again, tell us, it's like we're not sure why. Is it because you need to continue running these workloads on premises, so it's irrelevant right now? because you can't do it. So like I say, it's an incremental path. When we get logic apps on-prem and some other things on premises, maybe people are going to ask very loudly then that there's a big business rules engine gap. We don't see the same demand in the cloud to run a rules engine in that traditional mechanism that you have in BizTalk on-prem in logic apps. I mean, yes, people have asked for it, but not as many as you'd think, which is why we haven't got to it yet. So honestly, we really do prioritize, and we try to, make sure people don't wait too long once it becomes an issue, right? And we do this. We've been doing this with connectors for years, right? To try to get the connectors in front of people before they kind of hit the wall, right? And that's the way we operate in Azure, and that's the way we want to continue to go. To be agile, move quickly, deliver new features as fast as possible, so that we don't run into this sort of problem of predictability of like when can I have it, right? Okay, let's move on. Let's move a couple of things around. So this is an interesting set of questions. So, how fast is Logic Apps compared with BizTalk? And, what about Resume? Kevin?
Okay. I always love these throughput questions because it's how fast do you want it to go? As fast as possible. That's never a good question. But I'll first answer the Resume question. So the ability to be able to resume a logic app from a particular point of a failed logic app, that's kind of in a short-term list of activities that we want to do. It's just a matter of have our resources and stack that appropriately, but that is on our short list. In terms of throughput, that depends. You can't say for every single workload on BizTalk, the exact throughput that BizTalk can handle because it depends on the type of workload, the type of adapters you're using, the size of the messages, the size of the orchestration, the number, right? It goes on and on, for that. So I'm not sure how to answer that question. What's fast enough for you?
Yeah. And the Resume question, did you answer that?
I did answer the Resume question. Soon. That's on our short list of activities.
Cool. So what about on-premises, Vlad, APM management?
So this is something that we definitely plan to do, and unfortunately, I can't give you a specific time frame. But personally, I would love to see us do something in that area, probably first half of next calendar year. So next year, about this time, I would love to have a conversation where we get feedback on that feature. Now, the form in which we're going to get on-prem is to be determined. The preference right now is to provide the ability to deploy gateways on premises and still keep API management, management plane, developer portal in the cloud. And we think that this is the most sort of flexible approach which addresses on-prem, other clouds, and even in Azure deployments close to APIs. So it has a lot more sort of scenarios that can address. So that's a front runner in our mind, but again, we are always looking for feedback, and let us know what you think.
I think if you don't mind, Dan, it's worth just answering this because I think I think the questions are more broad than this because again, none of the whole sort of point about Azure integration services is that none of these individual services are a complete offering, and I'll come to that sort of one next around the Gartner questions. So, bringing API management on-prem and just API management on-prem, I'm guessing is useful for some scenarios, but what about messaging? What about orchestration?
Yeah, I think we've realized that we need to have an on-prem story, and actually, if you see how analysts now talk about on-prem, we started saying edge now, right? So you have hybrid, you have cloud, you have edge, and then you get really edge. Even in Microsoft, we use the term edge to describe both things like Azure Stack, which is more of a private cloud, and things like IoT edge. So that edge is kind of bleeding across maybe 4 or 5 layers now instead of just cloud or not cloud. And I think all of our stuff eventually will have to be available on all of those layers. And that's coming to all the messaging stuff fairly soon. All of the messaging stack we're actively doing development for Azure Stack, which is our first piece of that edge. We're going to build out from the rings out that way. And to build Scott and Satya both announced that we were putting Event Grid on IoT Edge. So that's coming as well. So that is work in progress. And yeah, I mean, they can, except for maybe Vlad, everyone else can blame me because I have to be there first before anything else. I mean, the lowest level in the stack needs to be there. And so we're underway and we're making progress. It'll be sooner than anyone in this room thinks, but I can't say when. It's going to be a big surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and it's the same story. I mean, just across the board, we want to provide you with choice and completeness. So whether it's messaging, orchestration, or API management, our long-term vision, as you've heard from our leadership, is to give you choice, being able to run on stack, run in the cloud, run in different models, edge, whatever it is that makes sense, to give you choices in terms of where you put things, because we know that it's no longer kind of one-size-fits-all world, and you want to use the same tool set for lots of different use cases. Okay, sorry, let's look down. Ken, why don't you take this data integrator one, because I don't even understand this one.
Okay, so that was related to analytics, I believe, so data integrator and analytics. So I guess within the CDS stack, there's sort of two groups that do this data integration. And we saw a little bit of this in my presentation where we talked about connectors. And then we also saw there's another area that focuses more on ETL type data integration, where it'd be batch or scheduled type integration at a database level across entities. And I believe the question was related to, will that show up in some of the analytics work that I talked about in terms of what's going on right now? So what is going on right now is we are unifying our admin centers across Power Apps, Dynamics, Power BI, CDS, and Microsoft Flow. This is something that we're going to be shipping very shortly. We do have a big conference called Business Application Summit in July, so you might see some stuff there. And as part of that, we are focused on bringing analytics to the entire platform. So immediately we're going to be shipping with what's called Dynamics Org Insights, Power Apps, and Flow. And from a Flow perspective, we will be able to show any of the CDS analytics that's moving through our platform. Technically, when we talk about more of this ETL, that isn't moving through Flow and the Logic Apps platform per se. So I can't speak directly around that, but what I can say is that we're going to continue to invest in analytics across the entire stack so that you'll have complete visibility in terms of what's going on as data moves through the business application platform and Dynamics.
Great, thanks. Kevin, a couple of other questions I think you're probably best placed to answer around BizTalk messaging patterns, things like routing slips and other types of routing pub-sub type patterns, as well as HA and DR around that. And I think probably we can talk about logic apps in that context, right? In terms of how do you create a highly available solution with the rich set of enterprise messaging patterns.
So in terms of the patterns, I mean, a lot of those patterns are covered. If there's gaps in some of those patterns, please reach out to me and we'll figure out either how to express that gap better or fill the features that are missing to fulfill those gaps. But in terms of DR, we are doing work to ensure that the trigger state is going to get replicated across different geo regions. We're doing it for some internal aspects today, and then we'll extend that to other trigger state aspects and have a nice kind of failover story between that. So we just have to round some of that stuff out, and you'll see that later this year.
And kind of on top of that, a couple of things that Matt mentioned yesterday, that we are working on reference architectures that aren't product specific, so kind of covering these DR and HA type scenarios where you could have a built out, regional deployments with traffic manager on top, with API management regionally deployed, with logic apps deployed underneath that, so you can switch workloads between different regions. And kind of showing that as best practices as well as deployable templates, so that you can kind of understand how this works, as well as being able to trust the solution and deploy it into customer environments. And we're going to sort of keep pushing on that. I think the other thing in terms of meshing patterns is exactly what Kevin says, is just help us. I think one of the things we would love to have the time to do, and honestly it's something you could really help us with as well, is we'd love to go through that big, thick, black and red book, and Dan and I have been talking about this as well, and understand what are the gaps in messaging and orchestration to implement some of these patterns that you see today, right? Which patterns do you think we're missing? Because I think there will be some product work that we have to do across messaging and logic apps to light up some of these patterns and help us prioritize that. Because we want to close all of these gaps so that we can fulfill all of the classic messaging patterns that people need to implement. So just to add to that a little bit.
Can I ask anyone
Sure.
in the audience actually a quick question? Speaking of GeoDR, is anyone using GeoDR in Service Bus or Event Hubs today? We have a GeoDR feature in the product. Okay, well then it must be great.
Yeah, works.
Flexibility in service bus solutions across different regions, though, and manually doing it, so sending messages out to two regions in parallel. So like manually.
So in like an active-active configuration, or is this for a failover only? Are you doing like a send? So the statement is about doing active-active between two regions for service bus. Are you sending every message to both regions? Yeah. Okay. And so you need a geo, and do you process both messages, or just primary in one and they're all kind of in the other?
The consumers, the subscribers, are external parties, and we say to the external parties that it's their responsibility to check timestamps in the message and to pick which one to process. So they have to pull from both queues.
Are the timestamps in the message body, or are they in the header? Okay, good. Yeah. Never rely on our timestamps. If time's important to you, measure it yourself. Same with sequence numbers. I guess the thing I would ask for that then would be, so what our thoughts on DR are that we have an active-passive DR capability right now where you don't change connection strings. Everything just kind of works. And we are going to be adding message copy to that, so the bodies will be there. But we're looking at the same sort of thing where, so now we give you a 5-minute recovery time objective, you control the failover, and we want to give you an RPO to go with the RTO. Also looking at something like that 5-minute, but you'll get exact order. You'll get all of the, as if it were the same queue, but you would have a small message loss window. Is something like that sound reasonable to what you're trying to do, or are you happy with your dual active sort of thing?
The dual active works okay. Message loss is right out. It's for a large London airport. And,
okay.
Losing a message would be
problematic.
May have consequences.
Considering I fly through London a lot, I will keep that in mind.
Okay, let's look at this one. AIS, so how do we make it real compared to Boomi and the others? And this is related to the other question around Gartner and do they understand it? At least from our perspective. We spent a lot of time with Gartner. I think, we showed the kind of fruits of our labor in terms of our placement in the MQ this year. Gartner continued to evolve how they measure this space and how they define it. It had it in the E added this year, so enterprise iPaaS to split out the fact there are multiple iPaaSs now that some are more aimed at enterprises than others. So, things are getting kind of more specific as the market matures. There's over 200 iPaaS vendors today. And there's expected to be a lot of consolidation and other things happening in this space. But, we did explain a lot of this to Gartner, both in terms of what we have now, what we were going to do in terms of the messaging around Azure Integration Services and what we were thinking in the future. And we kind of shared some of this with you guys yesterday. So I'd say Gartner do understand AIS, but they're also aware, as you are, that it's not complete yet in terms of making it real, in terms of having product features that really speak to it operating as a suite with the features on top of the individual services that you may expect to have them working better together, or whether it's visibility over the top of all of them so that you can see what's going on. And that's really, our vision and our sort of thinking going forward, that we needed to provide some guidance for our field and our partners as well as our customers to really understand that these products are meant to work together. Should I be using API management with logic apps kind of questions? It's like, yes, but we don't make that explicit, or we didn't make that explicit, and now we are making it much more explicit, and again, providing best practices, guidance, and what have you. And we're just going to keep pushing on this, because we're not going to go in the same direction as some of our competitors, where we try to get you to sign 2 or 3 year deals to use everything in a box together, and it's like at the end of the 2 years you're going to realize you use 20% of it but pay for the whole lot. We really want to make sure that you use the right services for the right job and provide the right guidance and product features to make that easy to make those choices. And if you do want to use them all together, then that's where AIS comes in. And in the future, we are thinking about, are there additional models of using these things together from a business perspective? But we're really just in the early thinking around this. So we can't really answer that question. And if it makes sense, we should do that, whatever that means, right? But the fact is, a lot of customers do just want to use API management on its own. Vlad and I talked about this a lot. It's like, is API management even integration, right? I mean, a lot of people use API management for non-integration scenarios. So we should let them do that, right? But if they want to use it to front facades for logic apps and other things, then they should be able to do that too and use the products together. So we're really, we're kind of very atypical compared with the Boomies of this world because we're Microsoft and because we have a huge amount of assets, both on premises, in the cloud, in the consumer space, and others. And the expectations are fundamentally different from our enterprise customers from theirs. We just have a lot of stuff, not just in the cloud, that has to work together. We have a lot of stuff, whether it's somebody's desktop in Excel running flows, as Kent showed yesterday, or whether it's doing B2B workloads in the cloud and Logic Apps, or running workloads on premises, doing kind of data processing, compute-intensive stuff that has to connect back up to the cloud. So, like all of it together just gets kind of crazy. We can't put everything inside this box and provide a business model for that. So we want to allow you to use the services individually or use the services that we've worked together as product groups with one another to add features to make them work great. And we'll continue explaining this with Gartner, and we do the same thing with Forrester and others, so they do understand where we're going, because honestly, we ask those guys the same questions as we ask you. Does it make sense? Should we be doing something different? Are we moving fast enough? Are other people doing something that we're not? And help us really understand, because this is a very, we're very early, even though it kind of sometimes you feel like you're late, right? We're very early in this whole space, right? I mean, the cloud's like less than 10 years old, and it's just going to continue to mature, and people's expectations are going to change over time as they move more and more workloads to it. Okay, is there a blockchain connector plan for Logic Apps and or BizTalk? Who wants to take that?
There can be.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would add to that is that you could create a custom connector without that much effort. Like, I guess blockchain is obviously a loaded term. So if we're talking Ethereum, you have the web3.js. There's also the Ethereum project, which is out on GitHub, which is a .NET-based Ethereum client. So you'd have the ability to put that into a API app relatively easily.
Okay. Tooling. The compatibility issues between the Visual Studio tools for Logic Apps 2015 and BizTalk 2016. Yes, that was a problem that we introduced. Honestly, it's like, from a timing point of view, we're trying to figure out how to fix it. Whether we fix it going forward and have support for new versions of Visual Studio is the right way to go, or whether we need to backtrack a little bit, because most of our customers just want everything to run on the latest version of VS and not have multiple versions installed anyway. So we are kind of figuring that out. The Liquid Template Designer, yeah, that's, does anyone else have one of those? We haven't seen one. If they do, no one does, yeah. That's why we need one, yeah. So it's something we've actually thought about. In fact, we've actually thought about it in terms of when you look at all the primitives and the constructs in Liquid, you could actually almost use the Logic Apps Designer to model a Liquid template, and whether we could do something like that. But that's very early in our thinking, and we haven't prioritized it yet, but if we were going to go down that path, it would probably look something like that. So we're not kind of giving you a completely different disjoint mapping experience. It would be kind of included inside that design or whatever that looks like. All right, that's the end of all of the questions. Do we have others now that we've talked for a little bit?
John, to follow up for Kevin, I have a number for you. 42. Yes, I do. 49,318 2,000 byte messages over 9 hours. Performance.
Yeah.
It's New York Stock Exchange throughput. That's aspirational goal, let's say, for Logic App performance.
So you want to put New York Stock Exchange trading quotes through Logic Apps?
Sure.
To do what?
There's a customer. It's a scale factor.
So, the reason I'm pausing is because there's quite a swath of different things you could be saying. One is, hey, the New York Stock Exchange is going to rely on Logic Apps to do their trading stuff. I highly doubt that, because they have some, I know I've worked with some folks from NASDAQ who have pretty stringent requirements as to like where that hardware exists and the financial requirements, et cetera, around it. So I'm dubious about the question. So are you just asking for how? I'm still not sure what your question is.
You wanted a number.
But the number's not sufficient.
Oh, okay. It's actually, it's kind of like it gives you a scale feel for how large, a performance number very large number and a large scale? You know, is it scopable? Possibly, I don't know. It's something to think about.
Well, I can probably elaborate on that some, because I was going to ask a similar question where we were talking about what does feature logic app implementations look like that are the end full replacement for a BizTalk app. So maybe a good one would be, we all remember the massive HIS project a few years ago at Integrate, where they were like, it was the, 60 million messages a day or something like that. And it was kind of, I guess I'm just wondering, what does a solution on logic apps that would eventually replace those massive scale BizTalk projects, what does they look like, and how far do you guys feel we are from that kind of capability? Like if you had HIS go
hang on, so I have an answer for that.
Some of it depends on the messages.
We're trying to give you a tool set, and let's look at the last presentation today. Don't use the wrong tool for the wrong job. I don't think you're going to put point-to-point solutions through logic apps when there's no requirement to do so. Okay? I don't advocate using BizTalk Server for that either. And I think that actually comes back to answering the NYSE question as well. Yeah. We don't expect you to, we're not going to deliver connectors only for logic apps. Kent mentioned you can write your own API app. A lot of the technologies we have in terms of host integration server, and even the line of business adapters that we deliver with BizTalk, you can run those in a function. We expect you to put those in worker roles, in web roles, containers. So it's not a matter of just how can you take everything that you do today with BizTalk or something else and fit it into logic apps.
One more thing. So, sometimes you've been equating BizTalk on-prem to logic apps in the cloud, and I don't think that's quite the right equation. You want to think about the comparison of BizTalk to what we're offering as AIS. And in AIS, we have a number of different products that work really well together, where before, in the old days of just BizTalk was your answer, then you only had one path to go through. Yeah, you had a couple of different routes you could go through BizTalk. But now, you may have, in AIS, you still may just have a messaging-only solution or an API-only solution. You don't have to go through each of the products to say that you're going through the integration offering in the cloud.
Kevin, I think that probably answers my question, my diatribe earlier on around the gaps. But I think that means that messaging around AIS has to be absolutely critical, right? Yep. Because if that doesn't come across in that messaging, then you're not telling the story of how you evolve essentially from BizTalk to something else.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what he's saying is making sure that we make a clear message that it's AIS that is the cloud equivalent of BizTalk in the cloud, not just an individual product that's up in the cloud. And that'll give a much clearer story and path and opportunities for people.
So more of just asking for your thoughts rather than a specific question. So quite a big part of our job as integrators is that we go into customer sites and stuff, and we are bidding for projects. We are competing against other organizations. And the nice thing about BizTalk as a solution is they give us a bunch of questions that we have to answer, and we can go tickety tick tick all the way down there. BizTalk does all that. Let's move on to the next thing. I don't feel entirely comfortable that with the logic app story, we can go in to a customer and say, yeah, you and I know that logic apps, we can achieve everything we need to do, but it's not quite a story, because from a customer perspective, it sees us as integrators having to go in and manually implement stuff. Now, okay, it's not writing C# code, but they do see it as it's not part of the product. We've got to go and implement something. So rather than having a nice story that we can go in and it helps us win projects, what we're sort of saying to customers now is it looks like we're going to be going in and implementing a bespoke integration solution for them. So is Microsoft maybe going to come up with some marketing stuff or something that can help us in this area?
Yeah, I mean, we purposely shared our where we're at today with Azure Integration Services, right? And we've got as far as printing some T-shirts and throwing them to the audience.
I didn't get one.
Doing some, yeah. But we, this is a group that we've met with you guys. I mean, for those of you who've been in prior years, and always wanted to share our early thinking with you and get your feedback, because we can share these things at Ignite, and there's 25,000 people, and we can't have these kinds of conversations. So yes, all of these things are all on deck and all in plan to execute on from a marketing point of view. We're looking at it from a product point of view, which features can we add and make sense. We're discussing a lot of this stuff at the moment. So it's a work in progress, right? But we already feel like it's better to sort of start in this way and put these things together and get validation on does it make sense. This is why we did this. We heard from partners particularly that just selling a whole bunch of individual services was like selling a bespoke solution. So as soon as sort of we put a box around this stuff and say this is, these are our integration services, we know Data Factory and a whole bunch of other things aren't there, right? And we'll sort of figure this out over time, that it's the first step to really building on top of this and making it what we need it to be, which is a product in some ways, if that's what you're looking at comparing it with BizTalk, but it'll have a lot more flexibility as a product, because if you don't need the rules engine in BizTalk, then you won't need to pay for the rules engine in BizTalk. So there'll be a lot of flexibility with it. And that's really what we're trying to strive for, right? Most people, the reality is they do not move everything to the cloud all in one go, right? So they really do start using services piecemeal in Azure, but as they mature and as they move more and more and as they start moving kind of key applications to the cloud, so they expect and take a longer term view of buying an iPaaS, which has to have this core set of capabilities. So these are the 4 core set of capabilities we know that everybody needs and should use together. So that's what we're building on first from a marketing point of view, from a reference architecture point of view, from a documentation point of view. And we'll be releasing some of this over the summer, being more concrete on where we're at Ignite in September is our plan, at least in terms of being able to explain this better than we're explaining it right now, right? So when our marketing guys get behind this, you start seeing the work that they're doing, it should start to make a lot more sense.
Thanks.
John, there have been more questions above, just to...
Okay.
Maybe like 5, 6 more questions.
Like in the file. You just have to scroll up.
Scroll down. Yeah.
What?
Scroll up, actually. Scroll up. The first questions you bypassed. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think we can go into concrete feature-specific things for future feature packs when we haven't even got 3 out the door. So I'm deliberately not answering those specifically because feature pack 3 is locked. So we should look at these as what we're telling you from a next feature pack perspective and which ones we can and can't do. I mean, at this point, we haven't shipped the last one, right?
Is he thinking around the integration suite a bit like enlightening strategy?
He's got lost.
Is it? Suite where it's just a bunch of products, sort of the individual widgets, but you brand them together so you can easily sell that message.
Kind of. I mean, that kind of had a sort of business model behind it as well. We had a lot of feedback as a company that people didn't necessarily want to be buying things all together in a suite like that for the reasons that I stated, that you don't necessarily need everything. So we're kind of trying some sort of hybrid sort of model of the two. Yeah.
Not so much a question as really an observation on the first question. I mean, you did say that, you wouldn't leave it, there's like falling off a cliff. But be mindful that this close, we're like 18 months into BizTalk 2016. There's no talk of the next version, really nothing concrete. There's a long list that Paul went through of other things that are priorities for you to look at. And just be aware that to some clients, 2016 with nothing concrete beyond it could look like a cliff edge.
I think we've been here every time, right? I think asking questions about the next version when the dust is still settling on the previous one and we're seeing adoption and upgrades of the previous one is we get it, but I think honestly the reason these questions get asked is because there's always the concern that is there another one, right? But that question has come up every time for the last 5 releases. Every time. In fact, because I worked as a PM on BizTalk with Sanjeev, who's sitting in the back of the room for 2016, and so you can keep me honest. It's like I got the first question about the next version of BizTalk the day after shipping 2016 from a customer. The day afterwards, is this the last one, right? The truth is, like, we don't know, right? We don't know whether we're on the next version of anything, right? I mean, what if everybody just migrated off it onto something else or left us to go all the competitors? Would there be another version of a product that had no customers anymore? BizTalk or SQL or anything else? The answer is probably no, right? But that's not where we're at today. So if we continue to have a huge customer base on BizTalk who have expectations on all the rest, everything in terms of new features and roadmap and other things, we'll keep delivering more features. And however we package those will be based on what our customers need. So that we get the features into their hand. And we're hearing, very broadly that customers prefer feature packs to, $1 million upgrades of existing infrastructure with breaking changes between releases and all the rest of it. So, we're trying to make things easier and trying not to introduce doubt at the same time.
Feature pack, that's great, but any love for the standard version with the feature packs? Or are that a cliff?
Sorry, what's the?
Is there any hope for feature packs for the standard version?
Oh, Paul.
Right. Yeah, no, I got that question. So can we apply the feature packs to standard edition, enterprise without the EA, and the way we do things in the cloud as well? I'll take that as an action item and go back. We have a new licensing team, so I'd be happy to. We broached the subject with them. We haven't followed through and completed the discussion as to whether there's any legal leeway to do that. So I'll take that as an action item. We'll go and look and see if we can loosen up the licensing for the feature packs a little bit. Okay.
Because the reason for the question is now that we don't have a vNext in the near future, where people would be starting to get those features there, right? And then there's a lot of people that might not have an enterprise agreement or only stuck in standard, and then those guys are actually stuck on time. They can't do anything.
Okay. Yeah. So the statement was, given that it's business as usual. John's statement is so correct. We never. Hey, how quickly is SQL shipping? And do they ever give you a roadmap until it's like 3-4 months away from being released? So don't expect any concrete stuff ever about when the next release is. It's not the same on-prem as it is in the cloud, where we give you a 6-month preview of what's happening in the next 6 months. But yeah, so given that we're not changing the way we operate and offering a new release of BizTalk before we get to the usual year or two before the end of life cycle, that's why you want to be able to apply the feature packs to standard. That's actually encouraging, because the feature packs to me are almost all about cloud integration, which means that you're serious about taking BizTalk workloads and integrating them with our cloud assets that we've talked about this week. And so, yeah, if we can help enable that by loosening the licensing on the feature packs and get more people to integrate BizTalk Server with the cloud using all those cloud-focused features and FP1, FP3, excellent. I'll take that back.
I think that's how we sell in most of the. We today managed to sell BizTalk based on the hybrid solution or the hybrid platform, and that's like a big part of the hybrid platform. Either we need something else to replace that and start to sell that, or continue give support to the on-prem side of the hybrid platform.
Okay, yeah, so Wagner's saying that the way that he typically sells, we sell BizTalk is selling the hybrid story. So yeah, anything we could do to help enable that, you bet. I'll take that and do some research on it.
I just want to mention that I respect the fact that you're saying that you don't give clarity on roadmaps. But Paul, during Integrate US last year, you showed a slide with the next CTP version being released second half of this year. That's a slide I've shared with customers repeatedly, and it's a premise for them to have chosen BizTalk in the past couple of years, as there was a clear vision moving forward on next releases. So there's a difference between not being clear moving forward and basically pivoting away from a roadmap that you've publicly shared.
Yep, we provided a public view of that in the last Integrate based on the current management team and planning that was in place, and we were not able to complete that planning and get approval, so we're not planning on doing that right now.
Yeah, but I think that's an important question.
Plans.
Yeah, but I completely understand, but it's not really being shared with us here as a change of plans. You know, I understand you're tiptoeing around the questions that are being asked here, but presenting these slides to customers and now having to go back, this feels a lot like things that have happened in the past decade or so, that a lot of people here have been involved in BizTalk.
This is not Project Codename Oslo, don't worry.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention the name, but it's Dublin and Oslo all over again, and a lot of the reactions after this are going to be, is BizTalk dead again? I already see the blog posts.
No, with Oslo 10 years ago, we were, 16 to 10 years ago, we were really clear about the statement. A few of us were sent around the world, and we were really clear. I'm not making the statements I made back then. So I'm not even going to say what those were.
What do you mean by you were clear about that? That BizTalk
We were really clear about the life cycle back then. We made discrete statements talking about the existing products, and then Oslo. We're not making those statements.
As in, you're not saying that BizTalk is dead this time?
I've made no statements.
So, but this is the thing. So I know this isn't really a question, but I do want to point out that whatever you did and didn't say last time, the result of this was the fact that customers assumed BizTalk was dead. So a lot of projects were severely postponed, and we had a lot of difficult conversations with customers for a very long time because there was no clarity. And pivoting from a roadmap without being clear to the people in this room that have to meet with customers starting tomorrow again, you're making it difficult on us again.
So we understand the risk. We don't want to make it difficult on you, and we want to do everything we can to work with you to clarify where we're at, we're moving forward. We're just being a lot more prudent about how we're making investments. And frankly, it's taking a lot longer to get the feature packs out and the CUs. Our customer base has grown significantly, and we're not moving as quickly as we used to. Another reason why it'd be nice not to pick up an entire new release sooner than we would normally. Continue on this model as best we can. Focus on the integration, as we've talked about, with the cloud AIS. And so I encourage you to reach out to Valerie and I so we can participate in these customer conversations and help you the best we can.
Well, let me be very clear on that. So just to finalize, I don't want to take over the entire session, but please give us some real clarity then on the support life cycle for 2016 at least, because this does feel like a cliff. So there's no version after 2016 as of now, and there's no absolute clarity on what happens to current support life cycle for customers that have potentially quite recently maybe started investing in BizTalk. I understand that you want them all to move towards Azure, but not every customer is there yet. So there's customers that in the last 6 months have started using BizTalk, large customers. We need to be clear to these customers at least on how long they can keep using BizTalk 2016, or if we really need to make a hard pivot with these customers towards cloud. So,
yeah, we understand. So be sure and express the commitment for Microsoft to not leave our customers in the lurch, and we're going to do the right thing. We just don't believe we have to make any major statement or change at this point in time. It's still early in the release cycle, and usually when we get about 2 to 3 years into the cycle, it's time to start having that conversation. So, yeah, have every confidence that we're not going to do anything that will jeopardize our customer base. Fundamentally, BizTalk Server is there to enable our customers' deployment and consumption of the broader platform. In and of itself, it's not, a huge market opportunity for Microsoft. So we want to make sure that the customers remain happy and we do the right thing for their broader business.
Okay. 2, 3 minutes. We don't need this.
Just a curious question. Through the here in middle, through the customer improvement program, do you know what components we use? I mean, when you talk about the rule engine, where to move it to the cloud, do you know how many use the rule engine?
The answer is yes. Currently, I'm having some problems with the telemetry, and the engineers are committed to fixing the pipeline. But we do, and we look at that formally weekly within the program management team. That's even broader than this group right here. We are very interested in the usage telemetry that we get, and we do dive into it deep on a regular basis as well. Every week we look at that.
If you want to share it with us, right?
Oh, is that what you asked?
No, I mean, it's whether we do, but we don't. You have to opt in, right? We have to opt out. Oh, you have to opt out. Yeah. So if you want to share that information with us, we can.
Yeah. So with BizTalk Server 2016, it's set to opt in by default because we don't have any yeah, just like SQL Server and Power BI and other products where we don't have any PII, personally identified information, it's okay to do that as long as we provide notice of that, which we do, and a way to opt out and document that. And so we encourage you to keep telemetry turned on. It's extremely valuable. If we had been doing it for the last 2 releases, it would have made a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now's the time to definitely keep the telemetry coming in.
Great. All right. More questions?
No, don't be scared about. So note is a particular note and a question also. I actually don't feel necessary to have a new BizTalk version. Why my clients want to have a new version to deploy everything again and pass all of this nightmare? No, I don't need it. I need a good story for like a feature pack, new features. Yes, that I will need it for sure. So I really love this new feature pack story, and continues of new features being delivered from time to time to not the same cadence of logic apps, of course, but to on-premise. Some of that became also on-premise, and we can actually leverage several things to the cloud, and we're using logic apps, API management, and so on. So I like this story. But at some point, I will also like to have a roadmap of extending the lifetime of the product. So let's say 2012, 22 is ending support with feature pack. This support will be extended. I'm happy with that story. I don't need any new version of this.
I don't think we can tie the life cycle to the feature packs though, but we'll take that under advisement. I'm thinking this time next year we'll have to make a statement. Are we extending the life cycle? We can start another release, that sort of thing. But the feature packs definitely give us input on what you want in the next feature pack. We were going to make it all about dynamics. I'm not sure we are or we're not. I heard XSLT 3.0. I heard better JSON support, but that came from me. On a built-in JSON pipeline, I won't have to keep genning my own because I don't seem to do it right. No, so give us the feature pack 4 requirements, and we can paint a pretty picture and get approval to do that. Okay, that'll be fun.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate you and the questions.